Just thought I'd do a quick little video as, well, probably the last of the colour in the garden before we fade into the winter months. Blue skies, sun's kind of coming out. It's behind a cloud at the moment, but 7 degrees according to the phone, and I kind of like it at this time of year. It's just at that point where everything's transitioning. I mean, I've still got, like, I don't know if you can see, brassicas still doing well. There's some cabbages, got beetroots coming through. Things that are evergreen are staying. Artichokes, I planted a load out. They've kind of are doing okay. But the nice thing to see is that finally, after such a dry season, things are starting to fill up with water. Probably get too much right now. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna flip the camera around if it will allow me to. Okay, apparently not. So I'll flip it in a second. Unusual. But I've just finished building this so that this pathway that I've got that literally goes to the field has no apparent use. I've just made it so I can kind of walk around the back because my intention is the other pathway that I have on the other side of the garden. I'm gonna get rid of that and put a greenhouse up. And then this area, which will then be the path, I can kind of grow like pumpkins and anything that's a climber basically and utilize this space. I also saw some guy that put fruit trees along the side and then managed to, there's this particular word I can't think, I want to say terracing, but maybe that's not the word, but you train them up and they go over, and I thought that was quite a cool thing to do. So I mean, that'll be a couple of years to get that through, but at least it's in place, and it's all stuff that I just kind of had laying around. As you can see, it's a little bit like higgledy-piggledy, but it's sturdy, it's secure. Yeah, I mean, it probably doesn't look great at the moment, but there's fruit trees all lined along here, and I've just cleared up the space behind there, ready for the winter. But I've still got things that are thriving. A lot of the actual flowering plants are still doing well. If I bend down so you can actually see, what I've done is, over the summer, all of the green waste and bark and everything I put into the compost heap is broken down. So I've covered it all with compost for the winter. But to stop everything, like, you know, either evaporating out or just drying out or collecting seeds that I don't particularly need in it, I then put a layer of wood chip over everything. You can probably see that there. And then covered it with leaves, with the intention that it keeps it all nice and warm when the winter kind of freezes over. And for worms, they kind of have a habit of coming up, grabbing the leaves, pulling them down, and then they aerate the soil in that way. So I've got, I'll show you in a second, I've redone the compost heap, and I've put a thermometer into it, which, considering it's probably it's probably about 2 meters high. Even the first couple of inches, it's 40 degrees at the top, so it's definitely working. And as more rain comes and it rots down, that will get hotter and help the process. So by the time spring comes, I can remulch everything with compost again and then cover it with straw for the spring. My hops did really well this year, considering they'd been in a conservatory literally dying for about 3 years, and I planted them out and I got a huge crop of them. Some roses. The grapevine did really well. It covered the whole, as you can see, what's left of it as it's browning into the winter. But I've really been trying to plant a variety of like different things that people have either given me or taken cuttings. Oh, pheasant. But look, I mean, like I said, I've got some cauliflower still growing. I've got pak choi growing. There's this plant that apparently is for medicinal purposes. The leaves can be dried and you can like make tea with it if you have a sore throat. And then in days of old, it has a nickname of witch. Oh, Witchwick or something like this. I think so. I'd have to clarify and look up online. But essentially, you get these really tall central stems. I chopped one down. It was probably about 1.5 feet long from this plant, which still then produced more shoots. And you would dip it into wax, and then you get like 15 minutes burn time for every like inch of it. So someone suggested I give it to the mother-in-law. Joking. um, anyway, as I go along, I still have like, there's a few tomatoes still clinging on. Yeah, like I said, I've mulched everything. I'm gonna be careful where I tread because I've planted so much for springtime under the leaves. So things like garlic, there's elephant garlic, which is kind of in the leek family, and it's not as strong as traditional garlic, but it's got very big bulbs. Plenty of different types of onions. I also found growing wild some kale and some beetroot that was just by another compost heap. So I dug it all out. I planted it in with hope that they're quite hardy. There's also some broad beans that are coming. I know they always say broad beans are a really good spring crop and they cover. And not only that, as you can see, there's a few coming through. They have this wonderful mechanism of actually fixing nitrogen in the soil because they have like a symbiotic relationship with a like a fungi that attaches itself to the nodes. So yeah, it's all good. And the reason I planted so many dahlias, there's one over here, there's a couple over there, there's a big one over here, is that if times were to be harsh, especially considering the economic realities of life at the moment, especially if you're in America, but we're not, but everything has a knock-on effect, you can dig the roots up and eat them as like chips. So apparently that's what the ancient Mexica used to do. Another cauliflower here, the cabbage that's kind of getting through. I've got strawberries, lots of strawberries that I put down as like a cover plant. I've just noticed I've got an aubergine that's still actually producing. The second year I've got over here is for, let's see, just a tiny one. This is asparagus, which is in its second year. I mean, they say you can start chopping it in the third year, but I might give it another year of growth before I start messing around with it, just so it has the opportunity to thrive. I think they last for about 20 years, so if you get one established. This over here, this mess is where I did try to put the foundations down for the greenhouse in the summer, but the ground was so hard that I got all the way around and it took an awful lot of work to do it, and then I was out by an inch at the end. So I need to get some sand and some gravel, do the foundations properly on that. But I'm happy with I built this pond in the springtime, which is fed from this pond over here, which also is ultimately fed from the shed. So I've got two 1,000 litre tanks at the back of that. They filled up pretty quickly, but they're not quite to the top yet. But when they are full, they fill up the pond by going down the rockery. That then runs into this pond, and then this pond, which, like I said, I mean, I'm really surprised as well. I put lemongrass, of all things, in the middle, and wow, it's done really well. So I was surprised. I mean, I put them in there originally just so that they had water during the summer, but the roots haven't turned to mush. They've actually thrived. So don't think they'll survive the winter and the temperature, so I might take them out and put them into the greenhouse just so they're not, well, I don't know. It's one of those things I need to look into. It's like learning. Yeah, if I come over the back of the pond, then I've got this part that I built, and it's all granite. That's the word I'm looking for. So hopefully what happens with the granite going down here is this will fill up when the ponds get over full in the winter when we have the rain, and then it should seep down into here, which is where I've got all of the fruit trees. Speaking of which, this apple looks like it's best compost is best, they can go in the compost heap. Yeah, so when we have another hot summer, which I inevitably think, looking at how it's been the last few years, that we will do, they should have a vast resource of water in the ground that they can soak into. But I've tried to plant herbs between everything, so I've got some sage, I've got some rosemary that's done quite well. Like I said, you've got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 6 artichokes. Now I had one that did really well this year, and so hence I've kept the seeds. But they're apparently part of the thistle family, so something I never knew. And apparently thistles are actually really good. The milk thistle, particularly the root systems. So I'm just trying to be careful where I tread. Now I've got some karobi somewhere that actually I should probably chop because they got so big. Planted up amounts of rockery. There are different herbs as well. I've got horseradish growing down here. Don't you can see? A little bird feeder, which is an old-fashioned telephone box. Reason I've hung it up above the pond is to stop any squirrels. Well, actually, I'm not going to put anything out yet. I'm going to wait till the temperature drops and like the birds are actually struggling to eat anything. But we'll give them something to eat without competing with the squirrels. He says, I'm sure they're trying. They build a freaking canoe, knowing how they are. So yeah, I've got some bay trees that, well, I've got one main bay tree and I've taken cuttings, which they seem to be doing okay. There's a eucalyptus that I've got to be careful because they can take over. There's a quince tree that has not yet fruited. I've got a very small, or like crabapple. I mean, jellies, things like that I was thinking. I decided to take my olive tree out of the container that it was in and plant it directly into the ground because I think, especially with the winter, it stayed small. The same with this tiny little maple, which, or it's an Acer, it's not maple, it's an Acer. But they have beautiful red leaves in the wintertime when everything else is kind of like devoid of colour. It still gives you something to look at aesthetically. Seems like this, like, just nice. I mean, I planted loads and loads of marigolds just during the summer to try to keep things like nematodes, which are not particularly great for the soil. Although if you listen to Gardeners Question Time, they tend to use it as like, oh, if you've got problems with parasites, put nematodes in. I'm not 100% convinced on that, but anyway, that's my own opinion. But yeah, like, just generally, I'm really happy with the way things have progressed. And like I said, I like this time of year. It's just a lovely time to take in all the colours. Like here, just in regards to the broadbeans, like, even though the temperature's really dropped and it's fluctuated, still doing well. Hydrangea. I've got they call it a licorice hawthorn. So that will give you not blackberries, elderberries eventually. So I just realised I've just knocked over my little China man. He needs to stay there. He's like he came from my father's house and he moved. He makes a great little gnome. And then yeah, the compost heap. I've got 2. I've got one. Forgive the mess about it, but I've got one here. That's the majority, like my attempt to make terra petra. I think that's the name of it, or peta, which is essentially when you put charcoal, activated charcoal, which I did by soaking charcoal in comfrey tea. Then you crush it really small, and then you put it in amongst the compost. And apparently that becomes like a self-sustaining ecosystem, and it keeps on regenerating. That's how the Aztecs, or not the Aztecs, sorry, that's wrong, but the Amazonians, before Cortez and the rest of the Spanish people got there, were able to sustain themselves in the Amazon. Because obviously the Amazon doesn't have fertile land because it's mostly forest, but by putting things like pottery and charcoal into the soil, they had really good growing fertile land. So yeah, and then just along here, as you can see, all of the spiky plants I put on the edge, they're all fruit trees, soft fruits like gooseberries, black currants, blackberries. I've got a whole selection of things. It was essentially to keep the badgers out, but they really like sweet corn, so they come. But yeah, so it's coming along. I broke my wheelbarrow putting this into the ground. It's about 60 kilos worth of granite. Most of it's submerged into the soil, but I thought I could maybe no, just put the name of the plot on it or something like that. And then yeah, the compost here, which funnily enough, my little thermostat, which I'll put back in. Like I said, it's quite high if you think how, you know, I'm not small, so it's quite big, but go a couple of inches in, it's about 40 degrees. So anyway, there we go. A little walk around the garden before the winter hits, and there's nothing really to show later on because it will all die back. But there's always plenty to be done, and I really like this time of year because it gives me the opportunity to have a look at little jobs and stuff that I haven't been able to do when I've been running around trying to water everything. Because as I said, it was a very dry summer. But I have now this year connected up another 2 1,000 litre tanks to, well, just over here by the compost, and the rainwater collects off the top of the compost heap. And that should ensure that next year I'm not stressing about being able to water anything, because the 2,000 litres literally just made it go through, but I had to be very frugal with how much water I was giving to plants. So hoping next year that's not going to be the case. I've also got some chard that's just literally had growing. It's just popped up out of nowhere. And then all the chili plants and aloe vera, all the things that require a little bit of warmth, I've actually taken home. So we'll bring those back out next year. Anyway, that's been enough with my mumbling and going on. Hope everyone else gets to enjoy whatever sun's left of the season, and yeah, have a great day, everyone.